Welcome to Perspectives from WFSU Public Media. I'm Tom Flanigan. This program using the Zoom platform pre-recorded on Tuesday, March 16th for playback on Thursday, March 18th. The show to air on WFSU FM also will be archived on WFSU.org. Wow, on one hand, it kind of seems like yesterday, and on the other, it's like years have elapsed. And I'm talking about this time just a year ago, when the pandemic truly became a determining force in our lives, at least for most of us. And among those who have been most impacted by all of this has been our older friends and relations and neighbors. And much has certainly been written and said about the higher mortality rate for seniors when it comes to COVID-19. But combine that with increased isolation and a host of other factors, and it would seem that a very large percentage of our seasoned citizens, if you will, would be in some pretty dire straits right now, but that's not necessarily the case. Kind of runs the gamut. And so we thought we would try to grab at least an overall snapshot of where we are when it comes to older folks and how they are reacting and interacting and all of that when it comes to the new circumstances in which we find ourselves. More hopeful circumstances, certainly, as the vaccine rolls out, particularly for this segment of the population and eventually through everything. So anyway, we've got a phenomenal panel to talk about that whole thing today. And let's go around and meet everybody again via Zoom. We'll start with Yolandahugh with Tapestry Senior Living in Tallahassee, who kind of helped to organize all this. And Yolanda, thank you so much for volunteering to do that. And it's good to see you out there at Tapestry. Which location are you located in?
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you allowing us to do this. So I actually am at both properties. I float back and forth. So I love it. I get to be at both communities and see how each one is unique in their character. And so I really appreciate this opportunity to kind of share a little bit about what's going on from our perspective.
That's terrific, Yolanda. Thank you so much. Also on our panel today is Twyla Sketchly, who practices elder law in the Florida Big Bend, and in full disclosure is a very frequent supporter of WFSU, for which we are eternally grateful. And Twyla, it is good to see you. You keeping busy?
I am keeping real busy thanks to the pandemic, which surprised me. Like you said, I practice elder law, mostly in North Florida, but throughout the state. And the pandemic has brought a number of unique challenges to the aging community, particularly in elder law and protecting elders and getting certain things in place. So I'm happy to be here today, and I'm excited to learn what all these folks have to say about what they're all doing with this lovely change of events we've got.
Yes, indeed, Twyla. That's why we're here. We also welcome to the panel Gail Matilla, who is with the Senior Living Association of Florida. And Gail, it is a pleasure to have you on the team here today.
Well, thank you, Tom. Thank you so much for the invitation, and I look forward to speaking with everyone today. I know Florida Senior Living Association represents about 450 large assisted living, memory care, and independent communities. So we're happy to share what we've been doing this past year.
Boy, that will be great to get that sort of information out here, Gail. So we appreciate your sharing that with us. And we finally wrap things up here with Dr. Neil Charnes, Director of the Institute for Successful Longevity at Florida State University, and one of the premier researchers when it comes to older living issues and that kind of thing. Dr. Neil, how you been doing here in the wonderful world of Zoom calls?
Oh, I spend a big chunk of time. Thanks for inviting me. Yeah, there have been massive changes, certainly for the research community, because researchers like myself, basically all our face-to-face research projects ended very suddenly when COVID hit. On the other hand, we've learned to use Zoom as a way to carry out some types of studies. So we've managed to kind of limp along and keep going. And I guess the other thing I'd say is that as a senior myself, I've gotten to experience personally some of the issues and the challenges that others in my age category have been experiencing. And there's some good news, there's some bad news, and hopefully we can chat about that today. And I think we have one other person still, Sheila.
We do indeed. That is Sheila Sullivan, who we have not seen out and about in quite a time because the Tallahassee Senior Center has gone to a virtual reality as well. But Sheila, you're here in the flesh, albeit cybernetically, and it's wonderful to see your face again.
It's great to see you all. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, we just kind of pivoted kind of quickly and went virtual to begin with, and old-fashioned phone calls, and then we transitioned to some drive-through events, and so now we're doing some outside fitness events and doing some tax aid services in very, very modified ways. But I think we all learned the value of essential social services and what the Senior Center provides for seniors to stay connected. And that was really our focus, to try to keep everybody connected so they didn't feel isolated and alone during this whole challenge of COVID.
Well, we can't wait to hear how that transition is moving forward from the purely virtual into kind of a hybrid situation that you just described right now. But first, to catch up on what's going on with our assisted living community here, Yolanda, let's start with you here. As far as Tapestry is concerned, how have you folks been adjusting to what was initially essentially a quarantine, where your residents had to have no connection other than the staff that you had there at Tapestry, and that was very, very limited too. What's things like for you folks now?
So it's been a unique year, and I think a lot of what we started doing a year ago to make accommodations because of the current climate have kind of just become a norm. They've become part of our day-to-day, and we've just adjusted. Activities are done in a socially distant manner. We will do small groups of the same activities, multiple sessions throughout the day, so everyone's included. We will do small outings, again, multiple sessions to include everyone. Staff also has represented more than just caregivers, or they represent more than just being caregivers. We are helping residents log on to Zoom so they can watch their grandchildren graduate. We're helping them Skype and FaceTime, and we're spending time with them. At the beginning of the quarantine, I'll just never forget, I started gardening with a specific resident, and the plant we had started in a little pot about this big, and I had to bring her this big old planter 2 weeks ago because it's grown. And those were the small things we were doing to ensure that while we can't ever replace family, we were still giving them that extra care. And it's love, right? You love the people that you work with, you love the people you spend time with. It's different from your family, but you still love them. And so that has become our norm. We've adjusted. We have the plastic barriers in the dining room so that residents can sit two to a table and still fellowship. The churches have been great. They have virtual Bible study. We have musicians who will play outside, and we open up all the windows. And so it's been a unique year, but in a weird way, it's become our new norm. Everyone's happy, they feel fulfilled. And, we're constantly adjusting. We're always looking at the new guidelines, seeing what we can implement, what we can adjust, because we want them to feel like this is their home. And so we're trying to get back to a sense of normal for them. And of course, the vaccines have helped. Having residents who, we had 99% of resident participation for the vaccinations. And that was huge for us. And, we're able to accommodate visits in the community. And residents who are vaccinated are permitted to go out with their family, right? We encourage small groups, but when they come back, they don't have to quarantine, right? So I kind of have been telling everyone Easter is a big deal, because last year, Easter, we had to cancel our Sunday brunch. And while we can't do Sunday brunch again, we have told them, please, go have dinner at your children's home. You're vaccinated. Please wear a mask, wash your hands, and avoid large groups. But it's just nice that they can have that little bit of normalcy back, still within all of the guidelines. And so it's been neat. Admissions into the community are different. I think everyone's kind of adjusted. So more folks are venturing out. They're looking at options. I kind of joke, I've been with Tapestry for so long, I'm getting calls and they're like, are you still with Tapestry? We called you, a year ago or a year and a half ago, but we're ready now that things have kind of settled a bit. And it's nice to say, yeah, we're here, we're doing great. We can accommodate tours, we can do rapid tests. And so it's just really neat to see how everything's changed. And I don't think we're not scared of all the change. We've really embraced it because we want the residents to feel comfortable. We want our friends in the community to feel comfortable. We want anyone who visits their loved one to feel comfortable, all within the parameters of, how we have to hold those different events.
Well, thank you for that update here for the a particular situation that involves a Tapestry senior living, Yolanda. But Gail Matilla, let's look at the larger statewide ramifications of this. Many states have stumbled when it comes to not only handling quarantine and visitation and all of that in these facilities, but even as vaccinations get underway, they've had some problems here. How are we doing in Florida overall? From your viewpoint?
Tom, we're doing great. I mean, early on, the governor prioritized seniors. He hasn't stopped. He's continued to prioritize vaccinations for seniors. He put together a visitation task force. He put together a vaccination task force, and I happen to serve on both of those. So I think overall, Florida has done a tremendous job with getting the vaccines to the seniors and all of the work that has been done behind the scenes. The Department of Health is still working very hard. They're taking, they took the oldest first with the most chronic conditions, and now they're reducing the ages to 60, 50, and now they're looking at schools. And, so they've got this huge plan that they've been working from the get-go, and it seems to be working. So we're really happy with the way that Florida has reacted and the things that have been done here in the state. Whereas other states, they still are struggling to get the vaccine. They're having some issues in some other states. And so it's a good day to be living in Florida for sure.
Well, Yolanda said that as far as the two Tapestry facilities here in Tallahassee, they're around 99%. Do you have any figures for statewide vaccination for folks in the rest of that population?
Sure. Yes. So we figured that about 86% of all the residents in Florida have been vaccinated. And we're talking over 3,100 assisted living communities in the state. And that's about 111,000 seniors. So of that, about 83 to 86%. Whereas the staff, though, we're still struggling with the staff. We're looking at about a 40% so far for the staff to be vaccinated. So our members and ALFs are encouraging staff to really think about, getting this vaccine. And I think as time goes on and they see that it's safe, that more and more of the staff will go ahead and get vaccinated.
Yeah, and that reluctance seems to kind of mirror the general population from the latest numbers that we've seen as well. So thanks, Gail. This certainly, though, as we come off of a time of pretty extensive isolation, though, Twyla Sketchly, does that or has that increased the vulnerability of seniors when it comes to, everything from, telephone scams to not so nice relatives who might be taking advantage of that situation? Is that what you're seeing?
Unfortunately, yes. And there's a, first of all, the social isolation, they don't have people regularly checking on them, making sure they're not subject to abuse or neglect or exploitation. You're also seeing the COVID financial strain impacting elders. So you may have family members who had good jobs and decent livings prior to COVID, and then they lose their job, and now you have a senior in the family who has a steady income and assets, and that person either voluntarily or involuntarily is supporting family members because of the loss of income. That creates a problem for a number of reasons. One, it deprives that senior of assets and income that they need to take care of themselves. On the other hand, too, is when that senior runs out of money, if they've given away their assets to their children, they may not be eligible for public benefits to help cover the costs of long-term care. So it's kind of a double-edged sword, and we've seen an uptick in exploitation cases since about last June. We've seen a definite uptick in the number of cases where people are alleging abuse and neglect in facilities, because where families were coming in on a regular basis and checking on their loved one, they weren't able to do that for months. And when facilities are strapped for employees and employees aren't showing up because they're sick, and it creates an oven for baking bad stuff. So that's where we find ourselves now. It's starting to get a little better with the vaccine. I have seniors who, when we come in and we do what limited in-office stuff we do, they'll announce, I've had both of my vaccines, and that's just kind of like, yes. So, and our firm made a decision at the beginning of this that our firm would not do in-person house calls or in-person visits to facilities. The governor's order allowed legal services to be presented and you could be in person. But, I know Yolanda and a number of people like her in the community. And if me and my staff, if 3 of us show up at a facility to do a signing, that's a danger to the people in that facility. And if we can do it in an outdoor way, it's also an extreme inconvenience. And our office just made the decision that if we could avoid that across the board, that's what we did. So we have had very few in-person house calls or facility visits in the past year, just to, alleviate the stress on the facilities. So.
Yeah, sounds like a prudent way to move forward, but that will obviously change as we get a greater proliferation of vaccinations in the community and all that kind of thing. But Dr. Neal, if we can ask you here, what you've been dealing with as far as, again, limiting some of the research possibilities that would be yours under normal circumstances, but moving forward under these conditions, what kinds of things have you folks been doing at the Institute, and what sorts of things are you most involved with trying to figure out given these circumstances?
Yeah, much of our research has kind of moved online. Zoom is probably our favorite platform at this point, like many other people's. And of course, we try to provide good instruction to people to use Zoom. But it's also meant that it's become a lot easier in some ways to have collaborations. So to give an example, FSU is part of a consortium of universities looking at one of the problems Twyla identified, which is the extent to which seniors are being, or fraud attempts are being attempted related to COVID-19. And we just started looking at the data on that. We're submitting a paper to a conference in November. And sadly, kind of what we suspected, there's a lot more of that activity going on, specifically COVID-related pitches. A lot of it's coming, surprisingly, online. Now, here's the problem. Because most of the people we're contacting online, we're dealing with kind of the savvy senior population. And so a lot of scams come on the telephone, but I think it's we're seeing about 40% of scam attempts coming on an online basis. And sadly, of the people that we've been interviewing, and this is a short-term longitudinal study that's looking at changes over time, about 10% admit to having sent money to a scammer. So that's a pretty high rate based on other research that has been done in this area. So we're a little concerned that, as Twyla was mentioning, when you become more socially isolated, as was the case with COVID, you're probably more prey to those types of scam attempts than under normal circumstances. And that was in part the reason for starting that particular study. So that's kind of one example. We had a multi-university consortium put together. We did it all kind of by email, online. Actually, I think in that one, I don't even think we even had a Zoom meeting for us all to get together. So we'll probably get together for the first time at a conference to talk about our results. But we've also tried to move online for some of the research we do is what we call experimental research, where we provide people the opportunities to interact with, say, a computer system with software on it, and they have to carry out activities with that computer. Those types of studies have become much more difficult. And so one of the approaches we've taken is to send computers to people with things set up as best we can and try to lead them through the experiments that way. We're holding our focus groups online at this point. In fact, sadly, I just volunteered my spouse, Beth, to serve on one of the focus groups that was short a person yesterday. I don't know if she's been included just yet, but she's very busy still with her newfound freedom after we both got our second COVID shots, and is actually looking forward to, instead of playing online versions of Mahjong, where she's racked up about 44,000 points on her favorite website, which shows you she's been playing way too much. She's about with some of her former Mahjong players, I think, to organize a small meeting at a house, again, along with CDC guidelines. But yeah, COVID's really forced us all to be really resilient. And that's true generally of the senior population. What's been amazing to me, all the research I've been reading, is that if you look at the groups in our society who've been most stressed out and most distressed by having to deal with the COVID routines, it's not been the senior population for the most part. They've done slightly better, if anything, than other cohorts. The groups that have been most hurt are younger women with children, with families, who now have the stress of at-home parenting, at-home schooling for their children, and so on. And they don't have the outlet, because of the problems early on before vaccines became available, of being able to ask for instance, the grandparents, like myself, to come in and provide some of the support that they would normally have. So seniors have been isolated, but we've also isolated families from seniors who could be really helpful under normal circumstances with these types of demands on people's time.
Well, that's what we hope, that that vaccination cohort expansion continues, so that you can get more of those family resources back together again. But you brought up something great, Dr. Neal. Oh, by the way, I have heard also Mahjong has been called World of Warcraft for Golden Agers. I don't know if you've heard that too.
I hadn't heard that, but thank you. I'll pass that back.
Yeah, that can be very, very dangerous and addictive stuff. I know. Sheila Salyer, that is one thing, though, that you have done at the Tallahassee Senior Center, even prior to the onset of the pandemic, was to make sure that the participants in all of the multitudinous in-person programs you had were at least somewhat conversant with technology. Has that increased to have programs online to help people become even better online, now that that has become the preferred way of communicating and connecting with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And with Neil's help in the Institute, they did some Zoom training, like train the trainer program early on. And so we had, excuse me, an army of volunteers that we could call on to help individually with seniors at home and doing Zoom. And it's amazing, you know, a lot of seniors did adapt. And if that was their option, that was their choice, they figured it out. And it was interesting across the state, when you'd sit in on some other Zoom classes and things in other communities, you could tell our folks had been doing it a lot longer and they were getting better at it. They were getting used to the mute button and the, you know, the video stuff and everything. And you'd go to somewhere else and it was, you know, it was like way back in the beginning of when we started. And so people do get better at it. Seniors have been, like Neil said, I want to follow up with that, have been resilient. I want to say too, is I've sat in on I serve on a national accreditation for senior centers and our state association. As we meet monthly with our leadership group, our senior center directors across the state have also been resilient. They have turned to their goal has been the same as ours, to keep seniors connected. That was just the most critical thing. And then how we do that, whether they do that through lifelong learning, health and wellness. You know, our fitness classes have been on WCOT for since last June, I think, 4 mornings a week that you could tune into a fitness class with just through your TV. Those classes are on demand and going forward. And that's something that we've tried to focus on with our staff, our team, who's been tremendous. If you haven't seen me, but maybe you've seen them out and about. They've also worked really hard behind the scenes to make all this happen. And going forward, we've tried to focus on what we could do, not what we couldn't do. We've tried to just keep our heads up, stay in there with it. And going forward, we are looking at a lot more hybrid situations where, you know, we're looking at how to get our current building equipped to be able to do that. We're not there yet, but coming back, a lot of people like the virtual classes. It will be options for people who can't come for a certain period of time or can't come anymore to the physical, you know, senior center, that they can still participate in classes. So we're going to try to equip all of our program spaces that way. It's been,
well, that brings us back to Yolanda then at Tapestry. And Yolanda, how have you been coping as far as traditionally having so many activities at places like yours that have been in person, have been congregate, have been a bunch of folks working together, and now you have to have, even after vaccinations have become so widespread, you still have to have all the precautions in place to make sure that nobody gets sick. How do you pull that off?
So it's been really unique. We actually have a system built into our TVs. And so for a long time, we were able to make PowerPoints, we could broadcast stuff, and it would go right into the resident apartments. So that was a huge help. I have to give credit to the senior center. We have actually been able to do events where our residents are participating and the community is participating because of Zoom. And, you know, I met with Lori early on and she said, we're going to do the Zoom classes. And I was so thankful, because if it was a way for us to stay connected and to kind of merge those two. For example, the senior center is having their St. Patrick's Day event. It's virtual. They're going to have the dancers. We're going to broadcast it, right? So we will set up our residents in different spaces, have it broadcasted on multiple large TVs. So we keep it socially distant. We get to watch the dancers. We're going to serve some Irish cream soda. I heard there's some Bailey's somewhere. And we're having corned beef and hash before, or corned beef and cabbage before. And so that's how we've been doing it, right? So we see what is out there, right? And we focus on, okay, how can we take this and make it feel like one of our grand events? Because you're right, Tom, you've been to some of our events. We have huge luau's and Halloween parties. And for Halloween this year, we couldn't have our trick-or-treaters annually. We get about 300 trick-or-treaters. The residents love it. Their grandbabies come and their neighbors' children come. And they were really sad when we had to cancel it. But what we did was each floor, we did a drive-by parade. So family decorated their car. The residents sat outside socially distant. We did the big food setup. We served everyone, but they still got to see the grandkids drive by and wave. And so we've just taken and created new best practices of how we do events. All of our events, we're still doing them in a modified version, right? So we might say, okay, first and second floor, your Easter party is on this date, and everyone comes and they know where they can sit, where they cannot sit. We serve, and then we'll recreate the same thing 2 hours later for third and fourth. Our memory care units are unique in that they're small neighborhoods, right? So there's only 14 folks on that floor. They have quarantined together throughout the pandemic. So we just, again, duplicate the party upstairs. So it's kind of funny because we kind of do the same thing sometimes all day, but it's because they want to keep those traditions alive. Because some of our residents have been with us since each property opened, right? So they look forward to these annual events. But we're always looking for ways to partner in the community. And, if I see someone hosting a virtual program, we will get that Zoom link and we'll broadcast it. But something that I thought was really cool that each property did is we got residents passports, and we did, we went around the world, right? So we would go to Italy and we'd read a book about Italy. We'd watch a documentary. We'd listen. We might even get live music to play. We'd have a traditional dinner that day. The chef outdid himself with the dinner. We had red wine on the table. And so, we couldn't travel, but we traveled. And so those were the things that we did to really just keep true to who Tapestry is, right? Because we always wanted to be the non-traditional assisted living, right? We know what we have to provide. Everyone knows we provide care as needed. But we also didn't want seniors to ever move into one of our communities and feel like they lost their sense of identity or they lost that spirit in them. And we really try to keep that going through the activity programs we offer. And so I think the team has done a great job. I sit in awe because sometimes I'm tied up in calls all day and I'll come out and there's this massive setup and I'm like, oh man, there's a party getting ready to happen. And so it still feels like the Tapestry that, when we were having our huge luau and St. Patrick's Day parties 2 and 3 years ago.
Well, that's important. Traditions, particularly for folks who look forward to special occasions, and to keep that alive, even given the challenges that you're working with, Yolanda. A quick reminder that we are doing a senior update here on Perspectives from WFSU Public Media with a great panel of experts in the seasoned citizen arena to find out where we are and how things are transitioning here to perhaps a little more open and, dare we say, more normal set of circumstances as we go through this. Hey, if you miss all or part of a Perspectives, it's always available online on our WFSU.org website. We try to have the most recent show up as soon as we can after it airs on the radio, so you can revisit it as many times as you would like. Bouncing off of what Yolanda was just saying, though, Gail Matilla, if we can ask you, what does the assisted living industry here in Florida need from the legislature? We always ask that when we are in the midst of a legislative session. Are there any particular measures that are teed up that could provide additional help for the industry and residents as we start moving through this transitional period?
Well, this all was new to assisted living providers. We are not nursing homes. We do not care for those with really chronic conditions that need 24-hour care. So a number of our communities were not ready for the PPE and all of the necessary supplies and equipment that they needed to put in place isolation wings and that sort of thing. And let me just say first, though, they have done an outstanding job of caring for their seniors during this entire year. I know it's hard to believe that it's already been a year. It's kind of flown by because we've all been so busy, just working all of the changes that have come down the pike. And I would like to do a shout out real quick. You were talking about technology and connections. The Department of Elder Affairs with Jack York from IN2L and the Alzheimer's Association received a grant from the Agency for Healthcare Administration and put tablets in communities and gave those to seniors so they could reach out to the outside. And I think that's just a great idea. And then with the senior centers and others teaching seniors how to operate the tablets and the internet and all of the different technology that's out there. Last year, we were successful in passing legislation that would allow assistive devices in these communities. So now they're able to use the most current technology from now on inside their homes in their assisted living community. So we're really proud of that technology and what's to come for seniors. As far as the legislature, yes, nursing homes, hospitals, all of the federally regulated communities received some funding, which we didn't. So we are asking the legislature for a one-time funding allocation to help assisted living communities recover from the PPE and the losses that they've incurred. In Florida alone, over $1 billion has gone to just hero pay, hazard pay, PPE and all of the things. So they've lost over $1 billion this past year. We're looking at a crisis in our situation right now because these communities, while residents are being vaccinated and, hopefully more staff will be vaccinated, we don't consider this pandemic to be over yet because we're still right in the midst of, wearing the PPE, continued testing, working with seniors, and new move-ins to get vaccinated. So we don't consider this over yet. We think this is going to be our new normal from this point forward.
How's staffing going with the facilities? Do you folks have enough people to keep doing what you need to do?
Workforce is always been an issue, but it has really been a huge issue for us this past year. Senior living is a great opportunity for most people. And, a lot of the kids coming out of college now, they don't consider senior living as their main focus. They kind of get into our business either by accident or, some other way, by some other profession, you might say. But we offer so much. And if anybody out there is looking for a job, they have a pretty good background, I would consider, check out senior living because it's such a rewarding role and you can move up through the communities and make a great living in our profession. And
given the demographics, it's a growth industry.
That is the truth. We haven't even reached the wave of seniors. And I'm so excited to say that, Florida's #2 in the country of the number of seniors. And we pride ourselves on being a senior friendly state. So that's another thing too, Tom. Thanks for reminding me. Anybody, come on down to Florida. We've got plenty of room for you.
And even Tallahassee now is vying to become a retirement mecca, as the Choose Tallahassee folks will be happy to tell you if you ask them. Twyla Sketchly, how are you dealing with the court system here? We got a backlog, I know, in civil cases down at the Second Judicial Circuit that is mind-numbing. Are any of these cases ever going to come to resolution?
Well, yes, eventually. Just to stop the pandemic, the Supreme Court, through a series of administrative orders, shrunk down, at one point, absolutely eliminated in-person court hearings. That's starting to loosen up some for, what I call vital things. So criminal due process cases, domestic violence, those kinds of things are starting to open up. In my arena, almost everything I do is via Zoom or telephone now. And that actually has had some real positive effects that I don't think anybody thought of. Before, when you would have a guardianship and you'd have somebody that was in a nursing home or assisted living facility, that was subject to a guardianship, it was fairly difficult to get them to the courthouse to participate in the hearing. And now with Zoom, and the facilities have been great, you know, they'll help actually put that person on the Zoom hearing with a laptop or an iPad. And so that person can actually now participate in the hearing, which was we tried to do in the past, but it was often very difficult to do, especially for people who are homebound or bedbound. The other thing that I think has been a positive in all of this is that the cost of legal services for doing hearings has gone down, because instead of having to pay for me to travel someplace to go to a hearing and sit there and wait if the judge is running behind and then have my hearing and back, I'm in my office, I may be doing something else, and then my hearing comes up, I participate in my hearing, I'm done with my hearing, and it's over. And so we've eliminated a lot of that kind of open cost in there. So that's some positive things that I see. Our circuit has been really good. Within, I would say, 3 weeks of everything closing down last year, our circuit had a plan. Our judges held telephone conferences with the attorneys that were the people in that area of practice and explained what they expected and what they were supposed to do. And it's been going fairly smooth. Now, those cases that aren't, you know, it's really hard to do a Zoom trial with a jury and all of that. So those kinds of things are being postponed, although we are having Zoom jury trials around the state and nation, and they're kind of interesting. But, you know, those things are going to loosen up as more and more people get vaccinated, and, you know, we don't have the danger of getting everybody in the same room all at once. So I think those things are going to loosen probably within the next 6 or 8 months. So.
Okay, that is good to know. Dr. Neil Charnes, if we can talk here about the opportunities that you see coming out of this situation for additional research, additional lines of inquiry when it comes to our senior population. What's the Institute looking at as we head into that still a little bit murky future?
Yeah, very good question. I think one of the things, something I've, of course, and members of our Institute have been interested in for a long time, is use of technology by seniors. And as Sheila and others have pointed out, when that became the only way in which they could interact, they started to interact. And actually, this is something I think I identified with a colleague at University of Michigan really early on, because they were starting to organize some of their first COVID-related studies. These were primarily survey studies. One of the things I was really curious about was not just whether seniors were able to do the just-in-time learning to get on Zoom, but how that affects their general attitudes towards the use of technology more broadly. And I have kind of a sense, certainly talking to fellow seniors, that what this has done is it's enabled them to see themselves as able to use modern technology. That is, it's going to encourage them to use other forms that they would never have considered in the past. Telehealth is probably a really good example of that, because we suddenly got, early on in the pandemic, we had some funding available to healthcare providers to do some of their visits as virtual visits. And that would be funded by HHS and Medicare, Medicaid, and so on. That was never the case in the past. And so that kind of forced not just physicians and nurses, other healthcare providers, social workers, psychologists to start to provide those services in that form. But that now suddenly opens up a lot more opportunities, particularly for people in rural communities, assuming we can get reliable internet into those rural communities. As I mentioned, going on in this interview, I had to leave my home where internet failed slightly about half an hour before we were supposed to get started, come into my office where it's a little more reliable. Of course, the problem is it's much, much worse in rural communities. So I think that's going to, I think what this has shown, not just the resilience of seniors, generally. But also, I think it's going to impact their attitudes towards using these new techniques, speaking to lawyers online as opposed to face, being able to, they might have been encouraged now to start to do shopping online, banking online. So a lot of things that they typically didn't do, my guess is it's sort of, this has been the thin edge of the wedge, enabling them to wet their feet a little bit, find out that they can do these things, do them effectively, and this will open up many, many more opportunities. So I think the research community has already started looking at this in survey research, and we'll be interested to see over the coming years whether this really boosts, helps to eliminate the digital, the senior digital divide that we've seen so far.
That has fascinated me, how the misperception, and you even see it in some advertising, is that, again, if you are over 50, you are cut off from all of these wonderful technological advancements. Like the one ad that just drives me crazy, where, you know, a group of folks, they're probably in their 40s, you know, are, you don't want to be like your parents. And the guy says, you know, well, you know, I sent out this message, was I don't know, FaceTiming or something like that. And everyone just sort of slaps their forehead like, you idiot. Anyway, Sheila Sullivan, does this also open up new opportunities for people who know perhaps no longer have to physically go to a place like the senior center? They can avail themselves of what you folks have cybernetically now.
Absolutely, it does. It's just going to create options for people to make those choices, whether they want to come in person or do it from their home or from their vacation or from wherever they are. But I do want to say, I think seniors are going to come back. They're ready to get back out. We are social beings. You know, senior center services are essential. What Yolanda and what the other senior living community are doing, I think you've seen the benefit of people being able to be around other people. I want to, you know, highly commend. I always brag about our aging network here locally in Tallahassee and Leon County. It is strong. These are caring people. Yolanda can vouch for the senior living communities work together with each other, with families, when it comes time to make choices and to do things together. Elder Care Services is a tremendous partner, and we work hand in hand with them and the Alzheimer Project, the kind of the three nonprofit, you know, service agencies. And then our, you know, our other folks in the community have just been great to continue to support senior services through this. And I'm encouraged and hopeful that our seniors here locally have maybe fared pretty well because of our network and because of how the community, the strong community we have a strong coalition on aging that's facilitated by Lisa Bretz and the Advantage Aging Solutions. So, you know, what Neil and them do, we all work together. And I really think that's why Tallahassee is such a great place to be a senior.
Great way to put it as we head into our final wrap up here, folks. I'll give everyone just a minute if we can take that here for any final comments or thoughts that you might have. Yolandahugh, let's start with you over there at Tapestry.
I'm going to speak generally to all the ALFs in Tallahassee because we do all work together in the best interest of our seniors. We will bounce, you know, hey, this person fits great here and back and forth. And because ultimately we want to see seniors happy. And so I have just been really on a mission to share that moving into a community, if you feel like you're ready and you want to pursue that option, it is safe. Everyone's doing an excellent job with infection control. And I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at what's happening. I always say nothing is perfect, right? Because we don't live in a utopian world. But if they give it a chance and they pursue, you know, that community they've been eyeing, it's time to go check it out because we have gotten to the point where we have things under control. And if you want to get back into socializing into a social setting, or if you're needing help, don't stay at home alone. There's options. And I know it's been scary, but it's okay. You can take the leap. And I say that just to any community you've been looking at, because it's so important for our seniors to be safe and cared for and be around other people. I've been blessed that I work in an ALF because during this quarantine, when I couldn't see my friends and family, I could come, and be with all these folks here.
Thanks, Yolanda. Gail Matilla with the Florida Senior Living Association.
It really is about the power of connection. And we've done a fantastic job this year. Our communities, like Yolanda talked about, they've really thought out of the box and gotten very creative on activities for seniors, and also the outreach like Sheila's talking about. Without the senior center and without all of those options for seniors, they would be really isolated. But I think they've managed to do a really good job. 87% of the seniors polled in assisted living communities said that they felt safe. They felt, loved, and they really appreciated the work that was done in our community. So, like I said, we're not out of the woods yet, but I think we're living in a new normal, and we will adjust, and we'll all be better for it. So thank you, Tom, for inviting me to be on the show today.
Thank you for being on, Gail. Elder law attorney in Tallahassee, Twyla Sketchly, your turn.
Well, I just want to say that I think that for all the bad that's happened in the past year, I think that some really positive things have come out of this. And I think that those positive things are going to move forward with us. We've come up with innovative ways to make sure that everybody can participate and be connected. I have homebound seniors who would never have participated in a senior center activity because they didn't think they could go there. They now participate in senior center activities. And if we can keep that going after all of this is, slowed down, that's a great resource that, is just going to improve the quality of life for so many people. And so that's what I think we need to take away, whether it be, the creative events that assisted living facilities do, the stuff that the senior center does, even my office, we've come up with some innovative and creative ways to deliver legal services that we never would have thought of before. And, we're real proud of that. So.
Thanks, Twyla. Sure appreciate it. Dr. Neil Charnes, Director of the Institute for Successful Longevity at Florida State.
Okay, I'm going to end by saying the light is clearly shining at the end of the tunnel at this point, as for a lot of the seniors who've already gotten vaccinated. But I want to throw out a challenge to your listeners. Those of us who've been vaccinated, and I would say seniors in particular, have a really important role to play to encourage other members of our community to become vaccinated. We have to reach out particularly to our communities of color, which have been very hard hit by this pandemic. We have to reach out to everyone, let them know it's safe, let them know it's effective, and let them know that if they can do their bit, we're all going to be back together in large scale meetings fairly soon. Hopefully, as Joe Biden put it, by July, in time for our celebrations.
Love your challenge, Dr. Neil. Let's wind up at the Tallahassee Senior Center with Sheila Sullivan.
Well, thank you all so much. The Tallahassee Senior Center has been really, really fortunate to be part of the city of Tallahassee, and the city and our leadership has just been really interested in seniors staying connected, staying healthy, providing all the resources and support that we can, and to let everybody know we are exploring our options for trying to reopen in a modified, as safe as possible way. And hopefully soon we'll be able to get something out and start getting some more people back in the door.
Thanks so much, Sheila, and to everyone. Thank you for being part of a very special perspectives here as we address the issues of senior response to some very weird times that we've all been going through. Thanks so much for being a part of it, folks, on Perspectives, which is produced by WFSU Public Media in Tallahassee. Thanks also to Taylor Cox, Paul Dam, Amy Diaz de Villegas, Brandon Brown, Tricia Moynihan, and Lydell Rawls, our Director of Content, Kim Kelling, who set everything up as Executive Producer here, and I'm Tom Flanigan. Hey, one other thing the pandemic has done, it has really put a stress test on a lot of our support mechanisms, both public and private. And very often a big problem with those mechanisms is they don't necessarily interconnect to provide more resources more effectively. We're going to talk about that next week, right here on Perspectives from WFSU Public Media. Take care.